Welcome back to Prideful Narratives, a space where stories from the 2S LGBTQIA+ community come to life with honesty, depth, and soul. I'm your host, Muakel, he, him pronouns, and today's episode is a beautiful journey into the sacred intersections of queerness, ancestry, and art. I am very honored to welcome a truly unique guest, Salvatore, who is also my friend. We've met in Toronto, and actually we celebrated New York Pride last year in June together. And he's also a multidisciplinary artist, musician, and healer who carries the heartbeat of Southern Italian tradition in his work. From the mystical rhythms of Tarantella to the ancient science of Ayurveda, Salvatore's mission is to illuminate the soul of Italian heritage and to use music, dance, and ritual as tools for healing, remembrance, and connection. Without any further ado, let's dive in. Very welcome to you, Salvatore.
No, thank you. I'm honored to be a guest on the show.
All right. So we'll jump into the first question or discussion point. So I know that your work deeply intertwines with ancestral traditions and spirituality. How has your identity as a gay man influenced your connection to Italian folk practices and mystical rituals?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Uh, through my travels and research, through all of this, one of the big aspects that connects to is in Avellino, which is right next to Naples in Italy. It's kind of like central South Italy. There's a festival that takes place, and this is called the Festival of the Femminile.
Mm,
And this happens on Candelora. Candelora is a Catholic holiday, but the Femminile tradition is essentially that roughly translates to there's really no it to put it in English, that would roughly correspond to LGBTQ,
mhm.
um, so to speak. But since it's much more ancient, it has a different understanding. And that's one thing I always like to elaborate on is we have a modern understanding of what being gay is or LGBTQ is. And then I like to look back on the ancestral roots, and that kind of informs me today and how it's seen as something more spiritual, or you have a specific duty to do in this life, because you're different from the norm, so to speak. And so it puts you in a position of you are a natural healer, you are a natural wisdom bringer, you are somebody who keeps traditions alive that isn't necessarily involved with the same things that the typical person would be involved with. So it already puts you at a certain position that's beyond the norm in a sense. So that influences me by knowing that I have a sacred kind of mission to do. That doesn't mean nobody else can do it, but it puts me at that position of knowing that it's essentially my duty in this lifetime. So that's how that informs me.
I really like how you connected the wisdom of your ancient generations and you apply it to the present moment. It's always interesting when we have this spiritual discussion and how you bring it into healing yourself and others, and we'll jump into that later in the.
Absolutely.
But I also like that you also mentioned about Italy and the geography and you sharing the insights. I know my father has traveled to Italy and he loved
Mm.
it on my bucket list. And just hearing about this, I also want to like visit it soon. And it sounds like what you shared is also similar to the concept of two-spirit in the indigenous community,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, very much. It's really interesting. A lot of the indigenous Southern Italian folk beliefs
Mm,
and indigenous healing traditions. They're very similar to Native American beliefs.
mm,
Even when we start to talk about ancestors and animal totems and things about like two spirit and the Femminile. Femminile literally means little man woman. And
mhm,
it sounds derogatory, but Italians have a way of making these cute diminutives in language, and it's not meant to be derogatory. It's meant to, like the folk lyrics, a
mhm.
lot of them will have these types of diminutives and kind of very strange ways of putting things. And It's meant to remind you that you are in the physical world. You are a part of nature. You are, get out of your ego. This is you here in the physical, and to kind of just remind you about who you are in a cutesy kind of playful way. And so it's not meant to be derogatory. And you know, and with the two spirit, in a sense with that, it's interesting in that concept because even in the folklore around that tradition, there's actually two men who where that tradition originates, and I'll share the story real quick because I feel like I have to add context for anything
I
to
mean,
make
this is the
sense,
first time I hear about this concept,
Yeah.
I love
So
hearing about it.
yeah. So originally the legend is that there was two men that they were lovers, and the town had ostracized them, had banished them, and they tried to kill them by tying them to an oak tree.
Mm,
And so they took ropes and they were back to back on the oak tree. And the oak tree is a sacred tree going back into ancient times. So you have that being overlaid into the modern. And so what happens is legend goes they see a light, and and this is in the middle of winter. This is February.
mhm,
Candelora is in February, so it's some snow. It's very cold, and so they're left to die in the cold. And this light comes down, and the snow begins to melt, and their bondage begins to unravel.
mhm,
And this is where the deeper kind of mysticism and the metaphors come into place, and the unraveling of bondage, the freedom, and all of this. They look to a mountain and they see a light coming down. And on this mountain, the light is emanating from the mountain. And they go to this mountain and they see this beautiful icon of one of the Marys. Her name is in dialect, her name is Mama Szkiewolna, which means the slave mother or the serving mother. And her legend is she's also an outcast, and she's one of the seven Marys. And
mhm,
this is where this is where some of the ancient tradition gets blended with Catholicism. And so what ends up happening is the seven Marys are really the Pleiades in a sense, or the seven sisters. And just in all of the constellation of the Pleiades across the world, there's always a missing sister, or a banished sister, or a lost sister. And this Mary is the lost sister. And the other ones are they're very vain. They like to look at themselves in mirrors and they go, I'm the most beautiful, and all of this.
of
And
arrogance.
yeah, they're very diva. And they look to the other one, the seventh Madonna, and they tell her, they go, oh, you're the darkest of us all.
Mhm,
You've dark hair. We're very light skinned. You're very dark. We don't like, you're ugly. And they banish her for this. And so they send her away. And this also gets into the whole topic, not only of identity, but then of race and how you look and where you're from and all this. It's all blended in this story. She runs to the mountain, and she's not found again until these two men find her that were bound to be
wow.
killed. And when the townspeople see that the ropes they escaped essentially from the oak tree and all this, they find their footprints in the snow, whatever, and they go to the mountain. And when they go to the mountain, they see them in front of this icon, and they realize that they have been saved. And because it's without explanation, how could they have been freed like this? How was the snow melted like this? And so from this day on, they realize that these are the protected children of this Madonna. They're the
Mhm,
protected ones, and they are sacred that they've been able to go up to this mountain and receive this. And the people realize that this is the most beautiful Mary of them all. And so today you still have this pilgrimage go up that mountain, and you have men they're basically in drag. Like men, they'll go up there and they'll like whether they're trans or gay, whatever, and they go up there. They have a marriage of the femininity. It's not a legitimate. It's like a folk marriage that they have as part of the tradition. It's not legal at all, but they had this go up the mountain, and they it's a pilgrimage, and they also have a rhythm and a dance. So the tamariata is sacred to this, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the rhythm of the drum, which it's more than this. This is just one festival. That Tamariata is a part of many festivals and many Madonas. But even before this, in the ancient time, this mountain was sacred to Cibele, the goddess Cibele, and that's her temple is right underneath the cathedral today. And here she had priests that were they were gay men that were priests,
Mm-hmm.
and they were trans men that were priests, and so and so this tradition, it never really went away. It just evolved and got remythicized into the modern. And so it's still going on today. And so it's still a powerful spot for transformation, for healing, and so it's a very powerful spot. Very powerful story, very powerful spot, um but yeah, even I have more stories, but I'll just stop at that one. With
Thank you so
identity
much
and
for sharing. Like, wow,
yeah.
this is very inspiring,
Yeah.
mystical, and transformational. And that's a spot I definitely want to like visit.
Yeah,
Like, I'm very spiritual and definitely
absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
been there. Like the story you mentioned about the two gay men that are tied in this oak tree in the middle of the winter, just put there to die in the freezing cold, but having
Hmm.
divine light warming them and helping them break free. And
Yes.
how they got connected to the Madonna just because she was discriminated for being unique and different, and that we members of the community of like the LGBT community we feel it, and you can see now the atmosphere is changing, and unfortunately homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia is also on the rise, but
Hmm.
it also gives us hope that there's always like a divine intervention that helps us and protects us, and we find each other and we build the community. So thank you so much for sharing. It's very
Yeah, no,
beautiful.
definitely.
Awesome. So I know you also mentioned a little bit like there was back then a gay priest, a trans priest. So it's
Hmm.
amazing to see like in the past there was also we've always been there all over the
Hmm.
history. There's a lot of evidence, and it doesn't always need to have this tension between your sexual orientation, which is part of your identity, and your religious aspect that is also part of your identity. So perhaps you can tell us like were there some times you felt like tension between your queerness and your culture or religious traditions? And have you ever faced resistance or inner conflict while reclaiming ancestral wisdom as a queer person?
Yeah, so I would say, I would say even beyond many different aspects of that, but in terms of religion, the Catholic Church is very dogmatic. So, it's very much like many religions are very dogmatic. And but the church has I would say Italians and the church have a very interesting relationship where the church has a certain dogma and it will inform about what is right and what is wrong and what they accept and what they don't accept.
Hmm.
And many people also believe in the church too and say this is wrong and this is right. But then you have people like me who are in the know, and we know of all the aspects, or many, I should say, many, not maybe not all, but many aspects of the culture that are before the church, or even that are alongside the church that the church doesn't like, and because it challenges the status quo of the church, it challenges the supremacy. And there's a whole history behind that. I mean, from the witch trials to, the modern day. I mean, even during the witch trials, if you were anything from a woman that was a midwife to gay to whatever. I mean, they were, you're possessed, you're whatever, and they were, outcasting you. So, in terms of that, I, for me, I'm interested in what the popular traditions are, which is the Femminile is one of them. I'm interested in what the folk culture is. That is runs, hand in hand or, on a line with Catholicism. But ultimately it's different from it. It has its own traditions that isn't against the church or isn't against Catholicism, but Catholicism tends to be against it. And
Hmm.
so that I'm always straddling, and in the community too of who is open to these things, who is totally shut out. And much of the community is totally shut out. They're like, "Whoa, this is weird stuff." And they don't want to they don't want to talk about it. And when even other Italians, even in Italy too, if you mention like the Femminile, they might not know what that is because it's only in one region, so they might be unaware of it. Or you might have people that say they're totally against that
Mm-hmm.
because even the church today, even though that festival still takes place on the church grounds,
Mm-hmm.
the priests will still think it's blasphemy and they're still shunning it, and they'll say, enough, and so there's always this continuous tension, and that tension runs through all the fabric of the culture in Italy and in America and beyond. So that's always a challenge. And I guess me and my friends and my other collaborators were always trying to navigate that path of how can we connect and teach people this so that they can reconnect with the culture and reconnect with these concepts and be more open and be more accepting and know that there's another way and not kind of scare them in a sense into thinking it's something totally foreign when
Mm-hmm.
it's not. It's it's happening right now. So it's always a challenge.
I mean, as you mentioned, it is a challenge, and sometimes there's a big gap, and it's a topic that is weird, and not everyone want to talk about it. But
Hmm.
by you mentioning it and sharing awareness, I feel you're narrowing the gap, you're building bridges,
Very
and
much.
to help people reconnect without having this awkwardness to it, but instead to promote acceptance, tolerance, and understanding. You're
Absolutely.
doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I try.
You're doing amazingly. So I know also you do some dancing as part of your healing, and there's
Yes.
the Tarantella. Perhaps you can tell us more about it.
Hmm.
The dance,
Absolutely.
from my understanding, a dance of transformation and
Mm.
healing. And how do you interpret its symbolism through a queer lens?
Yeah, so Tarantella is it comes from the old word for spider in Italian, which is where we get the word in English tarantula from.
Mm-hmm.
And the this was a tradition that again is very, very ancient, that goes into prehistory. There's many theories about where how it originated, but it originates as a form of trance dancing. And so there's the Tarantella, a is an umbrella term of Italian music and dance. One of the forms of that is pizzica. And pizzica means from the word pizzicare, which means to bite, which
Mm-hmm.
where I think we get the word in English pinch from.
Mm-hmm.
And through this, people that were, divorced, they were gay, they went through rape or like different types of. It was always had to do with not always, but a lot of the time it had to do with love or sexual traumas this way that were embedded. And the belief in that tradition is that those pains or that suffering or that conflict with the soul gets trapped in your pelvic bone. And through the dance, there's lots of thrusting movements, especially when people get into the trance aspect of it. And this is a way to release this
Mm-hmm.
and release this malaise of this depression of or anxiety or whatever it might be of this. And it can manifest in different ways. So sometimes it will manifest in depression or anxiety. Sometimes it's uncontrollable sexual behavior. Sometimes it's mania. Sometimes it's different things. And, there's, throughout all the different research, like academic research, there's all these stories that have come down to us of people that have said, like so and so, they were, like I said, they were rape, trauma, they were gay, and they would end up going through this dance and in this music, and they would be released this way. It was an early form of ecstatic dance healing, which is what's today. You see these like workshops for ecstatic dance healing and all that. It really comes from Tarantism
Mm-hmm.
and the Tarantismo, which is what the Tarantella, the dance is in that. And this was widespread across Europe at one time. And so even in Spain and other parts of Europe, it was called the dancing plague. And there's even analogous dances to this. Like in Egypt, they have the Zar dance, and there's other
Mm-hmm.
in North Africa, there's some similar ones as well. So it's very pan-Mediterranean. Um, but through that and through the movement of the body, and I guess the big point I want people to know is through movement and through music, there's a lot of healing can happen that way. You can really release that way because I think a lot of us we're always on our phones and we're
Mhm.
very locked in like this. When we move, we can understand different parts of ourselves. It's an invocation. It's a form of communication. It's a prayer. It's a way to it's a cleanse all in itself that way. And through that dance, we form there's lots of circular movements. And this is how you form, it's like a magic circle you're forming. It's a circle of protection. It's a circle of that spot where that poison, it's considered a poison, that malaise that you feel, and you're expelling that outwards that way. And you're a lot, and it's community based. So you're experiencing that with your community, and it's a way to share with your community. So, today we have a lot of community spaces. People talk about how they feel in this, and it's another form of that, but it just comes in a more kind of ecstatic form. And so through that, if you are gay and you are experiencing, resentment or something like trauma like that from that, this is a great way to embody that pain. It's not about escaping the pain, it's about embodying the pain and pushing through it and moving through it that way. And that's the best way to get through it is to expel it. You have to feel it. If you don't feel it, then you can't get over it. You can't bypass. This is not a tradition for bypassing. It's a tradition for feeling the pain, understanding the pain, why you have the pain, and then expelling it out. So you have to know yourself first. It's about knowing the self, knowing why that pain first started, and then getting rid of it that way. That's the cure, in a sense. That's the cure for the pain. It's the dance, that understanding.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And I also like how the languages intertwine with each other, like the word Tarantella meaning spider in
Hmm.
English word. And I really like what you mentioned because there's a lot of scientific data that backs up this. Like there's a book, a great book called The Body Keeps a Score, where
Oh
actually
yes, I know
the
about this book.
trauma
Yeah.
is stored in your body and it will manifest in physical pain. It can be like neck pain, shoulder pain, and you mentioned like it
No,
can be stored in the pelvic area. A lot of people become having stiffness, especially when they experience trauma,
very
breakup,
much.
or even like sometimes they get harassed or they go under like unfortunate event like rape. So there's a lot of trauma that is stored there. But as you mentioned, dancing can be a way to release it, to heal yourself. And I mean, the body to be healthy is meant to be moving, and the brain is meant to be still. So the more you move your body, it's better for you.
Exactly.
And I also like how you mentioned that with dancing, you can also have this community come together, people dancing together, building these connections to feel like you are supported, you are building your emotional support, and you dance, you heal yourself, and you're surrounding yourself with a community, and you're growing stronger. So
Yes.
it's a beautiful concept and a critical component of healing that people perhaps need to try as a way of coping with their traumas and actually releasing them. And I also like what you mentioned, like sometimes just by dancing, it's not like you're trying to remove the trauma. Sometimes all you need is to sit with the pain, observe it, be with it, and
Mm,
then once you pay attention to it, it will be released. So this is a
exactly.
beautiful concept. Awesome. So you also speak about moving from pain and trauma into power through music.
Mm.
Can you share a moment in your journey where music became a tool for your personal healing as a gay man?
Yeah, so, I think through, it's always a journey, but, through music and through dance that way, it's a form of meditation in itself. It's a form of philosophy where, part of that is just as you as the person experiencing the music and the dance that way in that circle of people, or even just as yourself, just doing the music and the dance, the philosophy of it, you at the core, you become what is like the black sun in a sense, and and that essentially is the opposite of the light sun, and the sun that's on fire, the black sun. And through this, the darkness becomes light. And so it's this whole process of going within and understanding who you are and what you are and who you thought you were might not be who you actually are that way. And then in doing that, I always try to stress too, and in this context, we're talking about, gay identity and all this, is that I always try to like emphasize too, if you're using the dance and you're using the music to work through that and that identity, always know that you're more than that. That's just a component of you. That's not the whole you. That doesn't have to be your whole personality.
Mhm.
And that should just be a component of your life. And when we take that as the nucleus of our entire world and everything is seen through that lens. And so when you go through the dance and you go through the music, you start to see yourself on the outside of that and realize like, whoa, there's all these other parts of me that I'm neglecting. How do I integrate that into that? And that's where we get the whole aspect when we start to spin in the dance. It's bringing that all in. That's that vortex, and that's when we really can go into the trance aspect of it. That's when we can really go into that trance and realize who we really are innately and taking off those glasses, those goggles that we've been using to say, I'm this, or I only see the world through this lens now. And you start to take those off and realize that, you know, that's a component of my life. And I'm like, what can I do with that? What is that? How does that inform me? How does that, it becomes introspective more so and more wholesome in a sense.
Mhm. I mean, I love what you mentioned because I'm a believer of the law of vibration.
Mm,
Scientifically, we all know that we are made of atoms, or even now
mm,
there's a lot of breakthrough in quantum mechanics and the quantum field, but we are made of atoms. Atoms are always vibrating.
mm,
Music by itself, it is made of different frequencies, different vibrations, and it can impact you so much. It can affect your mood. It can heal you. If you go to gym and you listen to music, it gives you energy to
mm,
push yourself. So, of course, music can be very healing, and the type of music you're listening to can have a great impact on your entire mood and your entire being, and affect you with its vibration that will harmonizes with your own. So beautifully said. So, in preserving the Italian spiritual and healing arts, how do you ensure they evolve to be inclusive and affirming of the 2 LGBTQIA plus identities today?
Yeah, I mean, it is very it's already inclusive, in a sense where everybody is welcome. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you're from. And it's really, it really attracts people who are on the outside anyways,
Mhm.
because it helps to, build that community. It helps to build that sense of self that way. And, through um working through that again, that malaise or that, kind of being on the feeling of being on the outside, that feeling of being on the outcast, like the original legend I shared, that being on the outside like that. Through the dance, through that music, you start to realize how you're a part of a bigger whole. You're actually a part of nature. You're never really alone.
Mhm.
And we understand through that we are one with the animals. We're one with the trees. In that music and dance, we know the Tarantella. We also talk about the Taranta, which are these are like the ancestors. These are the animal ancestors, and they come in the forms and dreams and through a trance as animals, with the music, as spiders as one of the main totemic animals, and through that they're teachers, and they're here to teach all of us something, and through that, being gay or trans or whatever you may be, through that, it's a way to kind of release what doesn't serve you anymore and be informed about something greater. And that's for everybody. That's for anybody experiencing any type of pain, or any type of confusion or any type of issue that particular problem may be causing you now. It's a way to get rid of old programming and take in new knowledge. It's a way to
Mhm.
get rid of what people have told you. It's a way to, burn away and erase or kind of um, um, create that kind of border in a sense, or that kind of like, how do I want to say it? That kind of
Self-love.
yeah, like that, just a kind of way to say that is in my past now. That doesn't serve me anymore. That
Mhm.
that emotional trauma, that emotional link, it's the web. We call that the web, and how does the web bind you? How
Mhm.
does the web connect us.
Mhm.
And those are webs that you have. So you have a web that somebody didn't accept you because you were gay or trans or whatever it might be. And that's a web that you have that's holding you. It's a tether. And
Mhm.
through that dance, that's we can break it that way. We can break that web. And so that the spider doesn't drain us like one of its insect corpses is in the web. It's all the symbolism is around the spider. So,
I really like this metaphor, especially about the web that is connecting us to past trauma and how by dancing you can break these webs. You don't allow the spider to consume you, to drain you, or
hmm
become its prey. Instead, you become empowered. And I really love how you mentioned
hmm
that sometimes you need to release. And I love this mantra. I always say it when I need to forgive and let go, which it says, I allow myself to forgive
hmm
and let go and release my past, and also embrace this new identity that is emerging through the power of self-love,
hmm
just embracing who you are, being proud of your entire being, and know that identity is intersectional, and part of your identity is your sexual orientation, or perhaps your gender identity and how you express yourself. But that's also not your entire identity. There's other parts that forms it, but you need to learn to love every aspect of your different identities. So this is beautifully said, and I love how inclusive it is. So, what has been the most surprising or profound thing you've discovered about yourself while exploring the rites and mysteries of your heritage?
I would say things that are like the most profound. I would say a lot of things. That one's hard. That's a long one. There's a lot of things that are profound. I would say probably the most profound things are, you know, knowing in a sense that there is a tradition that's so much deeper than what's in the mainstream. And you really have to speak to the community and you have to read and you have to really explore. Um, and knowing too that there's so many things that you can relate to in nature and how so much of it is connected to nature. Like many of the like I talked about the story with the Madonna, a lot of them are connected with trees and nature, and they have these very unique stories that, again, going back to the first question about religion and this and how it's not really Catholic, it's something else that gets overlapped, and these are still informing the people. These stories are more close to home because they answer questions that are affecting us in the material world every single day. And I would say, so, some of the most profound things would be just, and how you view things, how you see the world. I mean, even the drum itself, everything is so metaphoric and so proverbial in a sense. Even the drum itself, which is one of the sacred instruments, one of the main sacred instruments that we use, the very skin of the drum is the goat skin, and this is the flesh of the dying and rising earth this way, the flesh of the dying and rising God. And the frame, the wood, these are the trees. And 'cause part of the pizzica tradition is actually swinging on trees sometimes. And is the web. The rope is the web. This is to get out the malaise. The jingles on the drum, they can be it's reminding you of that kind of like hiss of the snake or the cat. And these different parts of nature are all just wrapped into that instrument. And just the dance itself and the quick feet, in the half step, it's like a limp, it's this kind of, limp of the animal in a sense. And how does that relate to myself? And to look at it and not know, to not do it, it's hard to explain. You have to do it
Mm,
in order to understand it. And it relates to all these things in nature. And the profound thing is allowing nature to inform you. Nature is the book.
mhm,
Nature is the unwritten book. And embodying nature. Just kind of like how, like in Chinese martial arts, they have the tiger pose and they have the mantis and all this. It's the same thing. It's like embodying nature that way. And through embodying nature, it informs us. It informs us about that whole nature of that animal. And like I said, the spider, there's something very profound in the spider of how it informs you and how, you have these webs that you don't even realize that are
mhm.
holding you back. And how do I break that? How do I move through this? How do I unleash the bondage like the two men on the tree like that?
Mhm.
And and moving through that and knowing that, no matter what pain that you have, you can move that into power. Never stay. There's something about, not staying stuck. A lot of the profoundness too, especially in Sicily, is like the volcano.
Mhm.
Is the whole essence of the volcano. It's fiery. It's hot. It burns. It destroys. But through destruction, new life grows more fertile than before. And so to go through that uh, trance state of it's like a death essentially. You're essentially dying in a sense from that. It's like an ego death, but you rise stronger again. That's just like the world. Winter comes, it dies, and then it grows back fertile again the next year, and it happens again. And this is cyclical. It happens all the time like this, cyclical. June is a big day for the Pizzica because St. Paul's Day in June 29th, I think, which is the summer solstice, around that summer solstice time.
Mhm.
And this is when the malaise, the spider becomes the most aggravated. This is why I studied Ayurveda as well, because it goes into humoral theory and humoral medicine, where our humors get aggravated. The web is wet and moist, and the hot and dryness of that season aggravate that. It aggravates your temperament and makes you release. And through the light of the sun, that light, like I said, you're the black sun when you're in
Mhm.
that circle, and the light of the true sun that way is illuminating you, just as the light was illuminating the two men tied to the tree that way. So it's all connect. It's very profound. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on with the metaphors of it, but that's what I would say is some of the most profound things. And it never ceases to inform. I'm still being informed. I know more now than I did last year, and I'm sure I'll know 10 times as much next year, just about myself and others. So.
I mean, I'm so amazed with all the years of our friendship. We never had this profound,
I know, I never.
like, wow, where all of this is coming from. Like,
Yeah.
it's so fascinating. And I'll never look at the drum the same way, how you connected each element, each component to a sacred symbol. This is like mind-blowing to me. And also, like how you mentioned, how you can channel the pain and transform it into power. I really love that. And there was another idea you mentioned. Especially how you connected again about the two men and the oak tree.
Mhm.
It's just like so profound. Thank you for sharing with
Yeah,
us.
you're welcome, man.
All right, so I know also that you're someone who bridges the ancient traditions and modern queer identity. So how do you define community and how do you build it through your work?
Yeah, community. Community is a sense of people that you can collaborate with easily, and that there isn't tension, but you have different ideas, and you can share these different ideas and build. I think building is the most important thing. Community is somewhere you can build. If you
Mm-hmm.
can't build with a group, it's not a community, or it's a community of destruction. I'd rather have a community of growth. And that's really what community is to me. It's where you can experience growth. It's where you can experience that fertileness. And community, I think of it as in a circle. Community is a circle that you
Mm-hmm.
have of
Mm-hmm.
people. That's not a closed circle, it's an open circle, but it's a circle. And again, I relate that even back to the drum. The drum is a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And the drum is fertile. The drum represents fertility. And through the drum, through the beats, originally going from the ancient to the modern, originally the drum, it was women would take this into the field underneath the full moon, and they would put seeds in the drum, and they would shake, and they would
Mm-hmm.
sing songs, and they would plant the seeds. And so it's linked to fertility. And that's how I see community, through that symbolism of the drum. It's linked to that community. It's the heartbeat. You have to share the same heartbeat that way, the same beat as the drum. You have to be in unity. It's like a band. If all of you are out of tune and you all want to do your own thing and none of you are collaborating, there's no song. You can't make a song that way, or it just sounds like a terrible song. It's There's no unity,
I love this harmony. So
So it's so you all have to play together. You have to create together that way. That's truly what, community is. And there's different aspects of community. So, you have community where you have the builders, the constructors, people who know how to use Excel much, better than I can and be more organized. Like, I need those in the community. You have other people that are on the outside. You have people that are, the women that are healers. You have the recluses. You have the gays. You have the whatever, it is, and you have the people that are more connected. You have the people who know how to sing. You have the people who know how to, dance. You have the people who know whatever it might be, whatever it is, and that's all of you coming together. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're from. It could be you could be from a totally different culture. You could be, I don't know, like Norwegian. I don't know, somewhere. You could be from, I don't know, but as long as you're sharing that same beat or similar beat. That's how you can create community that way. It's beyond blood. It goes into the spirit. It's totally beyond blood.
That's a beautiful definition of community. And I love how you mentioned that it's about being on the same team to be in tune with each other to create this beautiful harmony of the music, to make it like easy to hear, to support each other. And despite our uniqueness, we can use our unique gifts to uplift each other and be a beautiful, uplifting collective. So I know you're multi-talented and you do so much, honestly. So I know you're working at the moment on a play in the opera. So
Yes.
how does your queer identity find expression in that creative process?
Yeah, I mean, I work on a lot of different things. From like music to writing to,
I don't know
all
how
of
you do
that.
it, but
Yeah, I know. And they're all half-finished projects, but that's how I work. Everything's a mess.
it's good that you're starting.
Yeah, exactly. It all starts somewhere. But, I would say, in terms of identity in that, I try to make things where anybody can connect to them in a sense. So almost metaphoric in a sense. So whether you're somebody who's, been through a divorce, you're gay, you are just totally lost in life, whatever it is, you all can have a commonality. Again, that same beat. You're all sharing the same beat of
Mhm.
being on the outside. And so everybody can come together and understand that, and I try to bring that into, I mean, the music itself, all the Southern Italian folk music, a lot of that has to do with being on the outside. A lot of it is the rhythms of the people. A lot of the lyrics, have to do, with love, heartbreak, unrequited love, tyranny,
Mm.
longing, belonging, all these things. So that in itself is already, somebody that's queer can relate to that. Somebody who is, just lost in life can relate, generally lost, anybody can relate to these things. And I think that's the most important thing where I try never to like pigeonhole just one group because we're not just one group anyways. We're all connected to the same, we're all having the same battle, just in our own way. And
Mhm.
it's always want people to know is yes, you might, you're gay or you're divorced or you're, whatever, you just had a breakup, whatever it might be. We're all on the same level though. We're all sharing the
100%.
same, trauma or whatever it is. It's just it's our different manifestations of it,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we're not separate. That's what I'm trying to say. We're
Mhm.
not separate. We're all connected on this. So,
That's beautifully said. Like it's a deep, profound spiritual concept that we are all one consciousness, we're all one, we're all connected. And you also mentioned it before, like we are connected to the trees, to the animals, to the
mm,
plants. It's mentioned in a lot of traditions and a lot of ancient religions. We are not separate, like separation is an illusion. And I also want to circle back about the volcano, which is also a
mm,
great symbol, how sometimes it is a destruction, but destruction allows you to create new chapters because once a chapter ends, another chapter begins. So it's a cycle, and we're all connected, even
mm,
when we feel like nature by itself is an example how things are always changing, but then how things are connected together in a beautiful big picture in the grand themes of
very much.
things. All right, I'm gonna end it with this question. So, if you can send a message to your younger self,
Mm.
perhaps the one just discovering his queerness, what would you tell him today from where you stand now?
I would say, probably the most profound thing is, in terms of that younger self, how would I? I always think like, how would I change my life in a sense, for the better? I would say, know that everything you hear is an opinion, and most of what you hear is probably not the most accurate opinion, and it's just what somebody's personal belief is, not the truth. So don't listen to that. Be very careful who you listen to. Be very careful who you engage with fully, and never lose sight of your own ideas and what you believe in, because there's a lot of people out there that will try to lead you one way and you think it's a great way and it's not. And so never lose that sight of what you believe and your own goals, essentially.
That's a beautiful takeaway message, beautiful advice for anyone there who is still struggling, still in the closet, still
Mhm.
feeling, having fear of rejection or abandonment. Because as you mentioned, it's opinions and opinions are information. Informations are neutral. It's up to you what you perceive this information. But if you love yourself, you know your truth, no opinion can impact you. I mean, wow, what a journey, Salvatore. I'm so grateful to you for sharing your truth, your passion, and the sacred wisdom you carry, not just as a multidisciplinary artist, but as a gay man, weaving together healing, heritage, and heart. This conversation reminds us that queerness isn't separate from tradition, it is tradition. It is spirit, it is magic. And when we reclaim the stories and rhythms of our ancestors through a queer lens, we don't just remember, we transform. So, if today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, thank you for being part of Prideful Narratives community, where every voice matters and every story is sacred. Until next time, stay grounded, stay radiant, and stay proud. Take care, everyone.